What's up, yins? Today I'm going to show you how I perfectly set the chain line on my single speed bicycles. I'm Dumpster on Wheels. If you're new to the channel and you like bicycle content, how-tos, tech tips, reviews, just be sure to gently tap that like and subscribe button. That really helps me grow the channel. So let's get started. This is a winter beater bike that I have been using to ride during the winter. It's single speed, and today I'm going to show you how I set this single speed up with the perfect chain line. First thing I'm going to do is drop my wheel. Alright, so we're going to find this perfect chain line. We basically need two numbers, that's all. It might seem like it gets a little complicating for a second, but it doesn't. There's only two numbers here, and we just use them easily by halves. So the first thing that we need to know is we need to know the spacing of our rear hub. So this is a little bit of an older bike. Most mountain bikes were 135 millimeter spacing. That's what this is. If you have boost spacing, it's 148 instead of 135. So I'm going to take that 135 millimeter spacing, and I'm going to write that number down. Okay, then I'm going to divide that by 2. So I want to find the halfway point of this. And if you're not sure what your spacing is, you can check with some kind of gauge or something. So if I was to draw at 135 millimeters here, I would probably want to take the disc off if I wasn't sure what this is, but I'm looking at the distance from these, the inside of the spacers to the inside of the other spacer. And I don't know if you can see that, but that's going to be 135 millimeters. Like I said, if you're boost, you might be 148. So you can figure that out by measuring that if you do not know exactly what spacing your hub is. But I'm going to take that 135 millimeter spacing and I'm going to divide that by 2, and that is going to be 67.5 millimeters. Okay. All right, now the other number I need is pretty easy to get as well, and how I get that is by measuring from the center of my seat tube to my chain ring. Now if these bolts were a little closer down, it would be easier, but you can just put a little mark with a pencil, maybe an on-shaped tube. Could be a little harder to get this, but I'm just going to measure from my pencil mark to my chain ring, to the center of my chain ring. And we're at, let's say 51 and a half, let's say 52 millimeters. So that is my other number, 52 millimeter to, let's say, 2 chain. All right, and that's easy. That's all we need. So now we take 67.5 millimeters that we found up here. We got that again by taking the rear spacing of the hub and dividing it by 2. So we have 67.5 millimeters. And we're going to subtract from that, we're going to subtract 52 millimeters that we got from our spacing here between the seat tube and the chain ring. And we know that's 15.5 millimeters. So that's going to be our perfect chain line. So we got to get our chain line. I'll turn my gauge back on here, zero this out. I'll go to 15.5. I know this is getting a little bit crazy, but we'll go right there, 15.5. We'll lock that down. That 15.5 is going to be the space from here, from the inside of this spacer, to where we actually are on the hub. So you can see that if I was to put the center of that, it would be right there. All right, so then I can take all my cogs and spacers, and I can put a spacer on here. And I've had this on before and lined up. I'm just kind of doing this as a how-to video. But sometimes you have, this is actually a single speed hub, so it's a little easier to set this up, but if you had a 10 or 11 speed hub, you have a lot more play, and it's harder to line your, this is even more important. So you might have to vary the amount of spacers that you have in here. But you can see I had my spacer in there, and then this is gonna line up perfectly right over top of where my pencil mark is. And then I'll put my other spacer on. And I will put on my final spacer. Now, usually your final spacer's got a lip on the top. You can see this wouldn't go any further, but that's important too because we want to make sure that we don't leave any slack in there. So when this one goes on, this one's on. And I don't have any room to pull back on that. This inner lip isn't touching the free hub body. And then I can just screw this back on. Grab my tool and tighten her up. And Bob's your uncle. Now I'll stick my wheel back on. Chain tension looks nice. You always have a tight slot. And boom, you've got a perfect chain line. Fun item. If anybody maybe noticed this bike, they had the same bike. Maybe a cool fact you didn't know. Alright, so that's going to be a wrap, guys. I'm ready to ride tomorrow with a perfect chain line at that. If you like these kind of videos, be sure to go and gently tap that subscribe button. It should be somewhere right around here. And be sure to like, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.